Imagine leaving your desk to grab your morning coffee, and by the time you get back, your computer has copied a bunch of data from a website into a local Excel file on your PC, and it has synced that file to your OneDrive without you doing or clicking anything. Well, today I'm going to show you how to do exactly that. Hey everyone, my name is Jochen. I am a Power Platform consultant at Cegeka, and in the final video of this hyper-automation focused series, we have two more concepts to dive into: robotic process automation and process mining. And I know that both of those sound pretty scary, but as always, my goal is to demystify these concepts and take you along on a development journey in which we will tackle some simple use cases for these tools hands-on. If you want to catch up with everything we have done so far in this series, there is a link to the entire playlist. I can only highly recommend that you start from episode 1. Or if you're more interested in the concept of hyperautomation, there is also a link to the Cegeka website with all the information you need on that. But if you are just here to learn about robotic process automation or process mining, no worries, because you should also be able to follow along just fine. Now, there will be two major parts in today's video. We will tackle process mining later on, but first let's dive into some robotic process automation, also known as RPA. Now, why is it called like that? Well, because once we have developed our flow in a tool called Power Automate Desktop, you will see that we can just run the flow afterwards. And the tool Power Automate Desktop will kind of function as a robot that replicates our human actions that we did while we were building it. So in a minute, we are going to develop that flow that will automatically gather some data from a website, which is called web scraping, and it will copy that data into an Excel file on our computer. We will then make sure that it saves that file into a certain folder on our hard drive so that we can link it to our online OneDrive repository. And for those of you who have been following along from episode 1, remember when we made that very first Power Automate flow, where we kind of did that data sync between Excel and SharePoint? Well, now our goal is to keep that Excel file on OneDrive as up to date as possible. So that's exactly what we're going to try and develop in a minute as kind of the cherry on top of our hyper-automation cake. And as I already mentioned, the tool that we need for all of this is called Power Automate Desktop. And you can find it, for example, if you go to the Microsoft Store and look for Power Automate, this is the tool that we need, so install it if you haven't already. And during the installation, you might be asked for a language. If you want to follow along with today's video, I highly recommend that you just take English. You can always change it later on. But before we dive into the actual tool, there's one more thing you also need to get installed first. And that is the browser extension. I am going to use Edge, but if you want to use Chrome or whatever, it's kind of the same thing that you have to check. I'm going to go to Edge and then go to the three dots here and say Extensions. And then Manage Extensions. Make sure that you have this one here, the Microsoft Power Automate extension installed and enabled. Turn on extension. And we are going to need this because we're going to tell our browser in a minute to surf to a certain website and get some data there. So this is kind of the door that allows Power Automate Desktop to access our browser. It is a Microsoft tool, so you probably guessed it, there are some different licenses at play here. I am going to use the default license, which obviously has its limitations, but it is included in pretty much every Office package, Power Automate, or even some basic Windows licenses. Now just know that there are certain things and actions that you can do inside of the tool which require a premium license. Another restriction is that we can't choose the environment where we want to develop our stuff in, but I will get back to that in a minute. And lastly, I also want you to know about attended and unattended flows. These are the true powerhouses when it comes to implementing RPA, but of course they also come with the necessary additional license packages you will need. I'm not going to go any deeper into that licensing rabbit hole, but I will leave a link in the video description where you will find more details on that. And with that being said, let's dive into Power Automate Desktop. Now, apart from having the tool itself installed, we also have a couple of other things that we want to set up first, starting with this Excel file, currency rates underscore empty. And the Excel file literally looks like this. The most important thing here is that there is a table inside of this called, if I go to table design, table 1. And these are the 4 simple columns in that table. I have called the worksheet currency conversion, but that's not even that important. So make sure you have a similar Excel file. If you want the exact same one as me, there is that zip file that you can download in the video description that has the exact same files. And I've placed that file, as you can see, in my Windows C drive and then just in a temp folder. Just a little temp folder that I created on my C drive. There is that Excel file. And I'm going to close it. The next thing we need, since we eventually want to sync our file to OneDrive, I have this folder here, which is just the local repository, if you will, of my OneDrive. So if I go to my user here, I'm logged in with my admin user, which I've used throughout this series to create basically everything. You can see that this is my online repository of OneDrive, and if I just open up the local one next to it, you can see that this is exactly the same. So if I in my local folder just say new text document test or text, and if I then refresh my browser here, you can see that this is also now being synced to the online repository as well. That's just how that works. And the very last thing that I'm going to do as far as preparation goes, I'm going to open up another browser tab and I'm going to go to this website. Let's accept the cookies. And then all I am going to do is set this one to Euro. The date is okay. And then I'm going to click confirm. Because eventually this will be the URL that we will need in Power Automate Desktop to tell the flow, to tell the browser, if we run the flow, to go to this website. And I'm just going to leave this open because we will in fact need this when we are building our flow as well. Now let's open up Power Automate Desktop. There we go. And let's sign in. I'm going to sign in with my admin user here. And there we go. Welcome to Power Automate Desktop. I'm going to skip this for now and say got it. And you can already see the environments button right here. Now in my case, because I have set up that whole playground tenant with some trial users, they do have a premium Power Apps license, which I think is the reason that my admin user actually can create desktop flows in the HYPERAUTOMATION Heroes environment as well, which of course I am going to do. So I'm just going to click that environment and there we go. Depending on which license your user has, it might be that you cannot do this and that you will be kind of restrained to use the default environment in your tenant. But I'm going to click this one. You can already see the Go Premium button here. If I close this and click Go Premium, obviously you will get all this. And you can also click this link, by the way, to get some more info on the premium features. We're going to ignore that for now. And all that we are going to do is click New Flow and give our flow a name. Oh, and by the way, make sure that whichever environment you choose, that Dataverse is actually enabled there. Otherwise, it will not work. So the flow name will be HA for HYPERAUTOMATION _ desktop Excel update flow. And then I'm just going to create. And this will create the flow and it will open up the flow designer. And we can make this somewhat bigger, luckily, so let's go for something like this. And this is what the designer looks like. On the left, you have all kinds of actions that you can then drag and drop into this middle, let's call it the canvas part, which is obviously what we will do in a minute. But on the right, you can also see variables here. And if you click this one, this is UI elements, and this last one is images. We are mainly going to be using these first two, so let's just keep it at variables for now. Now the flow that we are going to build just has a manual trigger, which means that eventually we will still be the ones to manually trigger this flow. If you want to completely automate that, that's where the attended and the unattended types of flows come into play. Again, out of scope for this video, but be sure to check that out if that is something that you need. So as a first action in our flow, we are going to look for the action browser. And in here, I need launch new Microsoft Edge. And I'm just going to drag and drop this like that. This will open up a pop-up for every new action that we drag into our canvas, where we can just add in some parameters. In our case, we want to say, okay, launch mode, launch new instance, perfect. The initial URL, and this is where that website comes in. So I'm going to go back to my browser and copy paste all of this and paste it in here. Windows state, I'm just going to leave at normal, and target desktop is indeed my local computer. The only thing that I am going to do is click advanced here. Let's also make this somewhat bigger. And the only thing I'm going to change is if a pop-up dialog appears, close it. This might help sometimes, at least that's what I found out during testing. And that's it. That's the only thing I'm going to change. Save. So that is the first thing that flow will do. The next thing we want to do, if I show you the actual website, this is the data that we actually want to scrape. And to do that, let's go back to Power Automate. We can say extract. And then in the browser automation submenu, web data extraction, we need extract the data from web page. Drag and drop it as the second action. In which instance does it have to do that? Well, the browser variable instance that we just created in that step 1. So this is okay. Timeout 60. Okay, we're not going to play around with that. And the main thing we now need to do is what it says right here. Bringing an actual web browser window to the foreground while this dialog is open will activate the live web helper. So if I get my browser to the foreground, which in my case is this Edge window, nothing happens. And that's not really what I want. So I'm going to try and find out where this is going wrong for me, and I'll get back to you. So all I did was start up a new Edge window and not an in private one as I had before. And I maximized the screen. And if I now just take this to the foreground, you can see that I get this, the live web helper. And this is exactly what I want. See those red things moving around? That is what that extension does. So if you don't see this, either it might be because your extension is not installed or because you had the same issue as me, then just try and open up a new browser window and hopefully it will also start working for you. So what I want to do here is go to advanced settings first. So if I click this advanced settings, and I do want to extract a table. We could also pick entire HTML table, I think at least, but I'm just going to go with table here and then click OK. And if I now right click anywhere in this data table and then select extract entire HTML table, click, this is what you should see. So you now see the first 20 items as a kind of preview, if you will, but you can see that this is the actual data that it found on the website. And that is what I need. Then I just have to click finish. And here we go, a synopsis of the data to be extracted, HTML table records in the form of a 4-column table. Perfect. Save. The third step, what I want to do is launch Excel. Pretty easy. Launch Excel, drag and drop, and I don't want to start with a blank document. I want to open a following document, and if you just click inside of this, you can also find this little paper, I think, icon, select file, and if you click that, and then of course go to your location where that Excel file is located. Here we go, C temp, select the file and click open. And that is pretty much all we want to do here. I don't think we need any of the advanced options. Nope. Launch Excel, open the following document, this file, save. And do note that all these steps by now have outputs, and you can find those outputs here in the variables submenu. Because of course we will use some of those later on, as we are already doing basically with the browser variable. We're already using that in this second action. And now what we want to do is copy the data that it found on that website, which is stored in the variable called data from web page. We want to copy that data into the Excel file. And this action is called write. Write to Excel worksheet. Drag and drop it as the fourth action. In the Excel instance that we have just created from step 3, the value that it has to write, if you click here and then click the little X, we can just select our data from web page variable, which should contain all of those rows, right? So just select that or double click it here. This is what it should fill in. And we can specify where it has to start writing basically on a specified cell. And just to make sure, I'm going to open up that Excel file really quick because I want to start in cell A2. Let's close it again. And we can now say column A, row 2. Save. Once that is done, all we really want to do is save the Excel file. And we could now directly save it into this location. But I have found out during a lot of testing that saving directly to a OneDrive location, or a OneDrive synced location I should say, can sometimes cause a little bit of an issue in Power Automate Desktop. So I'm gonna do a workaround for that, which I have found, at least in my testing, that always worked. So what I'm going to do is save Excel, drag and drop to here, and we're gonna save the document not as the _empty one here that we opened. No, we want to save it as a new file. Document format can stay as it is, and the document path, if I just click that little envelope again and then go back to my C temp, I'm gonna select this file and click open, but then I'm gonna change the name here by just removing _empty. So basically it's going to create a new file, not there, here in the temp, called currency rates. And all I want to do as a next step is then move that file from here to here. And you will see why that always works. So this is exactly how I would like it. Save. And before I move that file, I want to do that as the very last step. I just want to close off our browser and close off Excel, because we have already saved the Excel file now. We want to close it before we move it. So first up, close web browser. Here we go. Which instance? Well, that's the browser variable instance. Okay, save. And then I'm going to close Excel. And this is the variable we need for the Excel instance. And we don't want to save the document because we already did that. So just click save. And the final action will be to move that file. Here we go, move file. Which file do we want to move? Well, let's do the exact same thing. Let's go to my C temp and this file, but we don't want to move this file. We want to move this file, even though it doesn't exist at this point. It doesn't matter. When we run the flow, at that point, it will exist. And for the destination folder, in my case, it's easiest if I just select this OneDrive window that I already have open and just copy this path to here. And this is why it should always work. We can specify if that file already exists, which literally is the case in this OneDrive synced folder, right? It's right there. If that file already exists, we want to override it. And normally this should work perfectly. Save, and now it is time to test it. But not before we, of course, save our flow as well. There we go. And now we can test it by clicking the run button. Before I do that though, make sure that your Excel files are all closed off, because otherwise Power Automate Desktop will try and access it, and no doubt you will run into some conflicts if that file is already open. And now I'm going to click run in a second, and after that I'm not going to touch my keyboard or mouse. So everything you will see on my screen in a second is done not by me, but by Power Automate Desktop. Here we go. Run. It opens up the browser window. I can see that Excel was briefly opened and it was closed. And we can see that status is ready at the bottom, which is already a pretty good sign. I can also see that my variables are now filled because my flow has run. Of course, the thing that I really want to know, let's go to my folder. First of all, the temp folder. There is no currency rates file here, which is also good, right? Because it was here briefly, but then it should have been moved. Only one way to find out. There we go. My currency rates in this OneDrive synced folder was literally just synced. And the flow didn't go into any errors, or there were no complaints saying, hey, this file already exists and it is synced to OneDrive or whatever. This worked perfectly. And the final thing that I can do to verify it is to actually open that Excel file. And although it is somewhat rounded off here in the Excel file, you can see that those are in fact the current values for US dollar compared to euro. So that now means that we can run this flow every day. And by doing that, we will always have the most up-to-date currency exchange rates in that Excel file. And as part of our hyperautomation solution, that also means that the Power Automate flow that we created in episode 1 will now also keep that SharePoint list up to date. And then the up-to-date SharePoint data is used in our Canvas app that we created, and so on. Now, of course, this is a very simple use case, although it actually works, as you have seen. But do know that if you have that premium license, or let alone that attended or unattended licenses, that in fact way more things are possible than we did with Power Automate Desktop. Now, if I close my Flow Designer and go back to this main window for Power Automate Desktop, we can click the 3 dots and then say Properties, and then you can actually set a keyboard shortcut here. Now, do mind, Windows already has a lot of shortcuts, so be careful, but feel free to test that out. Of course, I am not going to. I just wanted to show you that you should be able to do that with any license. So that was it for Power Automate Desktop and RPA. Before we move into process mining, I just want to say one thing. The main purpose of this video and the entire series is not to deep dive too much into all these tools, but it's more to inspire you and to give you an idea of how all these tools could be combined into one hyper-automation solution. That being said, if you have any ideas or suggestions for future videos, drop them in the comment section. Maybe even some RPA related topics. Let me know. But for now, let's move on to that other concept for today's video, process mining. Coming directly from Wikipedia, process mining is a family of techniques for analyzing event data to understand and improve operational processes. Now, 2 very important components in that definition are analyzing event data and improving business processes. Really translated within the context of our own hyperautomation scenario, this means that we can A. Take the data that we have produced so far in our support ticket system. B. Have that data analyzed by the process mining tools within the Power Platform. And C. Hopefully use the outcome of that analysis to improve our business system. Now, for the sake of this video and to keep things as straightforward as possible, let's now assume that we are 1 year later. So 1 year has passed since we have set up the system that we created in this series. So a bunch of tickets have been created, of course, during that year. They have all progressed through all the different ticket status phases, and they have now all reached the final status of completed. And let's also say that our desired ticket lifespan, so literally from the first status of created to the last status of completed, in total is 10 days. So we have 3 days for that first phase, 1 day for the second and the third one, and 5 days from the ongoing status to completed. Since we are literally handling their support tickets, we have also agreed to this with our customers. But over the course of last year, we have noticed some complaints about this not always being on point, if you know what I mean. Especially coming from customers that had tickets logged in the Europe region. So imagining all of that is our actual scenario, we are now going to use process mining to see if we can actually discover some issues in our process that could confirm or validate those complaints. And hopefully process mining can also provide us with some suggestions to eventually improve our system so that all those complaints are a thing of the past. Only one way to find out if process mining is going to help us with that. Let's dive in. Since process mining needs data as its starting point, I have created a special table that we haven't used before in this series. And it looks a little bit like this. On make.powerapps.com, I went to my Hyperautomation Heroes environment, and if I go to Solutions and then go, of course, to my Ticket Hub solution, and then I'm gonna go to Tables, and this is the one, HA_ticket status change, that I created. And let me quickly rearrange these fields first. Here we go, this is a little bit easier to explain. Because this first field, change ID, is just a unique identifier that I created. It's an auto number field just like we have used before in our other tables. The second field is a lookup to the ticket table. Because you can see ticket 001, well, that ticket will also be found in my actual ticket table. Then we have a date of the status change and the new ticket status. So for example, if we look at this first one here, you can perfectly see its lifespan from January 1st until January 11th with these different stages in between. And to keep things simple, for each ticket in our system, we always went from created to estimated to approved to ongoing and finally to completed. So we didn't have any tickets that jumped back to approved or whatever. You could do that if you want. I didn't. And that's literally all I did. I created 12 tickets in my ticket table, and for each of those 12 tickets, I logged the data of their lifespan, basically. And this is the data that I'm going to feed into process mining. Hopefully, process mining will find some anomalies saying, hey, that ticket or that region, something seems to be quite off there. Fingers crossed, here we go. To get to process mining, I'm going to open up a new tab and go to make.powerautomate.com. Also, of course, make sure that you are in the correct environment. Here we go. Now, you might expect that we again start from within our solution, but that's not really how it works for process mining, because I can go to my solution here, but as you will see, if I click new, there's not really, at least no easy way to start from here. So we'll create process mining first and then we'll add it to this solution later. And you might have already spotted it, it's right here. Click process mining in the left side menu. And if it's the first time that you actually use it, you will probably see a start free trial button on the top right, because obviously there are licenses involved. So I already started my 90-day trial a couple of days ago while I was testing things out, but you can just click start free trial and that eventually should get you to the exact same situation. You won't see this thing here because that's just a process mining that I already have set up as a little test. So ignore this one. We are going to build one from scratch. And if you want more info on the licensing situation, there is another link in the video description. Now, right off the bat, I also want to mention that process mining has a desktop app, just like Power Automate Desktop was. If you want to download that, click this button and it will help you during the installation. I am not going to do that because for what I want to show you in this video, the online environment should be enough. Now, I'm not gonna lie, this part of the series I think was the most difficult to set up for me, because it is quite a new tool, but it's massive. So you can do a lot of things. We are literally going to just scratch the surface here, but I tried as always to keep it as simple and straightforward as possible. So here we go. To create a new process mining model, click Start here. Select Process Mining, which is selected by default. I'm going to give this a name, HYPERAUTOMATION _ let's just say Ticket System Process Mining. Import data is okay, data flow is okay, and then just click Continue. And this is heavily linked to Power BI as well. I'm not going to use that link at all in this video. This is okay, we can just say skip. And now we have to just go through a couple of steps. Obviously, my data is on Dataverse, but you can see that you also have other options if you are interested in that. I am going to click Dataverse, and this is a weird step in my opinion, but it now needs this dynamics.com name from my environment. Luckily, it's not that hard to find if I go to my make.powerapps.com environment and then say advanced settings, I think. And this might take a while to load, but once it does, there we go. This first part here is exactly what I need, so I'm just going to copy that into here. And I already see then this connection because I created that in my testing process mining model. You will probably see this. You can just click sign in. I'm going to go for this one and then say next. And now it needs to know, since I chose Dataverse, which tables do you want to connect to? And if I type in HA _, because all my tables start with HA _, the first time you do this, you might not see your tables. All you have to do is just click this refresh button a couple of times. Eventually, they should also be here. And all I need as a starting point is this table right here that I just showed you. So I'm just going to select that one. You can get a little preview here of all that data and then click next. And this will get us into what I like to call the data designer, which I know looks really complicated and advanced. And to be honest, it's quite technical. But as promised, I'm going to keep this as simple as I possibly can. The main thing that you need to know that in this step and the next one, we have to tell process mining, here is the data that I'm going to give you. And in the next step, we also need to say how it has to treat all those different fields. But we'll get to that in a minute. Let's first tackle this thing. The first thing I'm going to do is scroll all the way to the right until you see all those blue texts. Because in my scenario, I also want some data that is on my ticket table, which of course is linked to my other table via this column right here, the ticket ref column. That is why we can kind of reach it here. I have to scroll to the right again now, which is too far. There we go. That's why we can reach it here as well. So what we can do now is click this little double arrow icon, and then we can say, okay, from the ticket table, which fields would you like me to show? I'm going to deselect everything and I'm going to filter on my initials because I want to see all those custom fields. So I'm going to go for ticket ID, ticket number, status, status name, description, customer, customer name. All of these I'm going to select, and then I'm going to click OK. And all these fields in like that darker gray color here, those are the fields that I just added to this massive data list. And what I can do now in this view, or I can go to view and then say schema view. This is the same thing as just a list of all that columns, and this is the actual data that you see. So in the schema view, it's really easy to select all the columns that you don't need, which I'm going to do right now. Let's see, these are all the default ones I don't need at all. Click the three dots and then just say remove columns. Also don't need all of these. Remove columns. Basically everything that does not have my initials as its prefix, I want to be removing here. So also these last ones can all just go. Alright, that already massively narrowed down this list. Now if I go back to data view, and let's scroll all the way to the left and start from there. So these first two columns are basically created by Dataverse as its own unique identifier. I don't need that here. So right click, remove column, right click, remove column. Ticket ref name, yes please. New ticket status. I do want to see this status, but I don't want to see this weird number here. I would like to see the status name, and for some reason, I also had this while I was testing, this is not filled in. If I scroll a little bit to the right here, you can see another ticket status field here. This is from the actual ticket that I expanded a minute ago, because you can see that all of those are on completed. So this works, but this is the exact same thing and it's not showing me that name. So I need to have a workaround for that. We'll do that in a minute. Let's first clean up the rest of this table. I do want to have this status change. I don't need this column, remove. I don't need this ticket number because I already have it right here. So double data is never a good thing. So I'm just going to click remove. These two I also don't need. You can also multi-select by holding down Control. So both of these columns can go. The ticket description, it's valuable information, but not for this process mining scenario. So I also don't need that one, remove. And maybe let's scroll a little bit to the right so we can select multiple columns at once. I don't need this one. I do want to have this customer name. It's the customer number basically, but I do want to have that one. I don't need the region number. So I'm holding down Control, I'm unselecting this. But I do want the region name. So let's just get rid of these two for starters again. There we go. So region name, I definitely want. I'm not going to bother with these fields. You could use them, absolutely, but I am not going to in this scenario. So let's just select them. Also going to select the engineer comment, and even the engineer assigned to, I don't need it in my scenario. So right click, remove columns. And finally, we have two expandable fields, which I also know that I don't need. We have a customer record that we could expand, and we have even kind of a relationship to itself. I don't care, I don't need that. Right click, both of them, remove columns. And these are the 6 columns that are left, and those are exactly the ones that I really care about for this process mining scenario. Okay, final thing we need to do here is to fix this problem, because eventually we don't want to use this number We want to have a human readable value, if you will. So what I can do, if I go to Home and then expand this menu by clicking the arrow and then click Enter Data. This is okay. Use first row as headers. I'm going to create a second column and I'm going to rename this first column to Ticket Status Number. And the second one will be, double click, Ticket Status Name. Those are my column names. And now we're just going to use those values here. These, by the way, might be different for you because you have different data sources probably. I just need these exact numbers to be copied here. And this first status is created. And if you wonder how I know that, if I go to my Dataverse and then to my choices that I created way back, I think in the very first episode, you can see that I have a choice HA_ticket status. If I click that, this is exactly what I want to have in that new data source in my process mining as well. And there are some commas or whatever it is in between here, but in fact, it is just a raw number. So let me just copy paste the number and then say 1. And this is estimated. The next one, the 2, is approved. The next one, 3, is ongoing. And the last one, the 4, is completed. All right, 5 lines in our data source table here. Okay. We can double click this to rename it to, I don't know, Ticket Status Matrix or something like that, just a name. And we have to right click it and then disable this ticked enable load. Because we don't really need this as actual separate data. We want to just include it in a minute in our main data source here. So let's go back to that data source and now we can merge queries. And I know this is all technical stuff, but this is just how we have to do it as a little workaround. So we're basically going to join data tables. This is our first table. Our right table to merge will be our ticket status matrix here. And now we just have to select the 2 corresponding fields, if you will, which obviously is this one and this one. Left outer join. Perfect. The selection matches 60 of 60 rows. Awesome. Okay. And now we have a new column here. And we can expand that once again, and all we really want here is that ticket status name field. Okay, and there we go. Now we can drag and drop this as kind of our second field, and we can literally say, okay, this field and this field can now go right-click, remove columns. And by the way, you can see a list of steps here on the right side. If you have messed up, you can always delete these steps to kind of go back and then redo everything that we did. But in my case, this is exactly what we need data-wise. So all I need to do now is to go to Next. And this is a super important last step, because now we are actually going to tell Process Mining how it has to treat these different fields. And if you click this drop down, you can see that you have multiple options here. The most important ones are these 3 that are marked with a red star. Those are also the 3 required ones. And the first one here we're going to set to case ID, because process mining mainly works with cases and activities. In our scenario, our tickets are our cases. So each ticket, so to speak, is one case, and each ticket status change is one activity. So that means that the second one, ticket status name, this will be set to activity. And the third one that is also required is event start. Well, that is going to be our date of status change. We don't have a event end here, which you could do. For example, the day that it actually moved to the second status, you could include that in your data as the end date for the previous status, but I haven't done that. And the final 2 that we have, customer name and region name, these are on a ticket level, right? Each ticket has a customer linked to it, and each ticket has a region filled in. So that means that we can set both of these as case level attribute first or last event. It doesn't matter too much. I'm going to take first event for both of them. And by the way, you have more options here, of course, which I am not going to dive into, but feel free to have a look at this list. So we have now set up our data by massively cleaning up that initial query that we had, and we have told Process Mining how to handle, if you will, each of those remaining data fields. All that is left to do is click the magic button, Save and Analyze. Click, and now this might take a little while. There we go, it is now preparing our report. You can scroll through these if you want to. Again, it kind of encourages you to download the Process Mining app. I am not going to do that, feel free to check it out yourself. What I am going to do is click Process Mining menu button on the left here, because as always, it is just easiest if you manually refresh your browser because it shouldn't take too long. So what I'm going to do is just refresh this browser until my Process Mining model is done. Still analyzing, so let's just wait somewhat longer. Refresh. And there we go. My ticket system Process Mining is done. Now, before I show you the results of the Process Mining, I already know where the anomaly in my data is because I literally manually entered all those records in that table. As I told you before, our ideal lifespan of a ticket is 10 days. I have made sure that in that data for our European region tickets, that the lifespan is way higher. And that big delay period is actually situated between the estimated and the approved status, which normally is just 1 day, but in the case of these European tickets, it is actually set to 11 days. So let's find out if our Process Mining model also sees that anomaly for starters, and hopefully it can give us some suggestions for improvements to our system to get rid of the anomalies altogether. Let's find out. So I am just going to click my HA ticket system Process Mining. I'm going to shut down Copilot for now here. And this is what we see in the overview menu. The first thing that we see, average case duration 15 days, which in our scenario means the ticket lifespan. So this is already a first red flag for us or for management to see like, we were kind of hoping for 10 days here. Then we can also see that each of those 12 tickets all went through those different stages all the way from created to completed. That is why it also says that we just have one variant. If we would have tickets that, for example, skipped the approval phase or whatever, we would probably have more variants than that. And the 5 activities here is just indicating those 5 ticket stages. Now, if I go to this performance menu and then set this drop down to mean duration, which is the average duration, normally we would hope for 1 day between the estimated and the approved phase, but we can already see 6 days here. So within 20 seconds, we have kind of already identified the major red flag. And again, there are way more things to see here. You have a map here of your process as well, which in our case is pretty darn simple. You have variant DNA, which is even more simple because we only have one variant. But in the desktop app, you have way more graphs and stuff that you can choose from. Feel free to check that out. What I am going to do here is try and see if Copilot has any useful information for me. If I look here to the right, I can basically just click buttons, right? I'm gonna say provide the top insights, click. But this is now AI generated answers based on the data that it analyzed. And to be honest, this is kind of the same, I guess, as what we already saw in this map. So I'm gonna click the next button, how to identify my bottleneck. Let's see what it gives us here. And what do you know, we already kind of get an indication of what could be wrong because it is saying region influence. Cases in this region have a positive influence of 16% on case duration. So okay, let's dive into that a little bit deeper in a second. Then it also says customer influence. I have 3 customers in my system and all 3 of them have a mean case duration of 15 days, indicating no significant bottleneck from these customers. So in human language, the customer doesn't really have an influence on your lifespan for the tickets. And we could drill down even more by clicking these buttons, or we can literally type in whatever we want to know. So let's imagine we haven't seen this and we can just say, does the region have an impact on the total ticket duration? Maybe I should say case duration. I don't know how smart it is. And there we go, exactly the same answer. And now I can say, can you give me some suggestions to address this bottleneck. And what do you know? It actually says, well, maybe you could create a flow that implements automated notifications for cases in the Europe region to ensure timely follow-ups and reduce delays. Or utilize Power Automate to create a workflow that escalates cases in the Europe region that exceed a certain duration threshold. Both of them sound pretty good, and let's just click the first one here. And what this does is actually open up a new browser tab to make.powerautomate.com. Let's just say try it here. And this is also completely AI driven. So this is what Copilot suggested. If I click this arrow here, it doesn't really give me anything specific. So maybe let's try that second flow here, this one. If I try the same thing, submit. There we go. We actually get a suggested flow with the trigger and some actions already in it. And this is now a button, so an instant flow. But for example, what I could do to drill down even more is say, can you make sure that this flow is scheduled every day at midnight? Now I would hope it would replace the trigger, and there we go, it actually did. It also created a planner task, which is not really what I wanted, but hey, I can go back and just try again to fine-tune it even more. But let's just say this was the flow that we wanted. If I now click the keep and continue button, I just have to quickly sign in, which it automatically does, and then I'm gonna say create flow. And it literally creates that template, if you will, for this flow. Of course, you can now tweak it and add stuff as much as you want, but just starting from process mining, we now get eventually a solution from Copilot, which is a template of a flow that we can now further expand to our liking. And the last thing I want to show you here, let's say you want to add more data later on, also perfectly possible. Go to details here, then click setup, which will get you back to that last step here, and then click transform data in Power Query, and this gets you back to our favorite screen of all time. And then you can just do the changes, click next, and then go through the same cycle basically that we went through earlier. I am not going to do that. I'm going to click cancel, but what I am going to show you is how to add this now to a solution, right? So I'm going to go to solutions and then to my ticket hub solution. And here I can say add existing, more, other, and then I think it is still called PM inferred task. This is something that I know Microsoft is still working on, so this will become more user-friendly. But just know you can add it to a solution by clicking this one. And then I need this process mining that we created, add. And at the time of recording, this now adds this inferred task, but it also adds this process template. Is this super useful? Not really, because you can't really open the process mining model from here. So just know that, yes, you can add it to a solution, but no, it's maybe not as useful as you would think. So hopefully you can all see that process mining can very much help you with analyzing and improving your business processes, as long as you have reliable and relevant data to start from. So let's say we would actually implement that flow that was just suggested to us. In 2 months from now, we could then again use the same process mining model, ask it the same questions, and then hopefully come to the conclusion that the changes that we implemented actually made a difference. We could then ask it for new or other bottlenecks, implement more suggestions that it gives to us, and so on, rinse and repeat. And if that is not hyper automation, guys, I literally don't know what is. It was a lot of work putting all of this together, so I really hope that I was at least able to inspire some of you by giving you this overview of what you could do when you start combining all of these tools within the Power Platform ecosystem. Thank you so much for coming along with me on this hyper automation journey. I wish you all the very best. Hopefully I will see you again in a future series, but for now, stay safe and take care.